and welcome to This is USG, a video podcast for the universities at Shady Grove. 9 universities on one campus with great results. I'm Khademian, Executive Director of USG. Today on the show, I am thrilled to be joined by Dr. Carolyn Ringer Lepre, who was inaugurated this year as the 10th president in the history of Salisbury University. Dr. Lepre joined Salisbury after serving most recently as interim president of Radford University in Virginia, where she began as provost and vice president for academic affairs. Her higher education career has included faculty and administrative posts at Marist College, along with prior faculty roles at the University of Tennessee and Cal State University. Her professional journey also includes her work with a number of national publications and media outlets, which has included her research on media representation of gender and diversity and health communication, among other areas. And I'm delighted that she and Salisbury University are among our wonderful 9 university partners here at USG. Dr. Lepre, Lynn, if I may, welcome to This is USG.
Thank you so much, Anna. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's great to have you. I wonder if we could start just with a little bit of an introduction. I'd like to have guests say a little bit about your journey and how you came to Salisbury. I noted in my opening that you have disciplinary professional experience in communications, in the media and journalism. So tell us a little bit about why higher education and how you came to be a professor, and then how you came to take on administrative leadership as well, and ended here at Salisbury.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for that question. I think it's one of the greatest joys, it may be of all of this, is that I happened upon a career that I love so very much, and I always consider myself to be very lucky when I find other educators who've had a similar career path, and we all sort of thank our lucky stars that whatever it was that happened to lead us to this point happened, because what a joy it has really been. But you mentioned that I had professional experience before I started. I did. I actually originally got my degree in journalism, as you mentioned, and I thought, I grew up in New York, about an hour outside New York City, and for the longest time, I just loved everything that there was about writing and reading, and that morphed into, well, could I be a writer myself? Could I write long form journalism? And then that sort of became a love of magazines. And so my degree really was that. It was focused on long form writing. I was an English literature major, and then got my master's degree in journalism with a focus on magazines. And so my very beginning was I thought, oh, I'm going to do it. And I moved to New York City, and I worked for a couple of consumer magazines. And just as I was leaving my master's program, my advisor, who I just loved, I loved working with him. He advised my thesis. He goes, "You'll be back." And I said, no, this is it. I'm very excited to move to New York and be a journalist. And I'll tell you, it never left my head. And I think, right, when we think about what we do in terms of mentors and the impact that an offhanded statement sometimes can make in a person's life, I never kind of lost that. And periodically I would go back for, varying events on campus, and he would see me. He's like, "Are you ready yet? Are you ready yet?" No. And then one day I was. And what a joy that was to discover that he had been right all along. And that led me to my PhD program in communication. And I thought, wouldn't it be an amazing life if I could teach about what I loved doing and what I loved reading, and to sort of educate that next generation of students who are going to be amazing journalists and writers. And that's literally how it began. Started off working as a communications faculty member. I was thrilled to have been hired as an assistant professor right out of grad school. Got on the tenure track and moved my way from Cal State Chico to the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, all in magazine journalism, editing, graphic design, those sorts of things. And then one day I landed at Marist, which was back home again. more or less for me. It's near my family. And I had just gotten tenure, and I had an administrator, the vice president for academic affairs there, who said, you'd be a really good director of the honors program. And that was really it. Is I started in administration and realized that I could, once again, kind of like the journalism to teacher role, I could kind of have the best of both worlds. As I could be a teacher and an administrator. I could teach in the classroom and have that impact and that love of working with people who were excited about what they were learning to do, and being around students who are so invigorating. But at an administrative level, to be able to have that larger impact on how the education they were getting on a college campus was more holistic. And it sort of was one step led to another. Then I thought, well, maybe I could be an assistant dean, and well, maybe I could be a dean and then a provost. And the wildest step of all was from provost to president, I got to tell you. But what a joy that has been. And being able to come to a university like Salisbury University, that is part of this extraordinary university system of Maryland, where you feel like you're not just a part of a university, you're part of a group of universities who are all working together to educate the next generation, not just in the classroom, but to be wonderful citizens and to be happy, satisfied, successful people who are going to help grow the communities that we live in. So it's been quite a journey, but really every step, what a joy.
Well, I love the way you've been open to all the next possibilities coming down the pike, that like, oh, maybe I could be a dean. Oh, maybe I,
I'm terrible at saying no. The longer you get to know me, you'll realize that if one person says to me, you're really good at it, I'll be like, really? Okay, yeah, let's try that. And then
I could try it. Well, I like to think about it though as being open to possibilities, right? I mean, you're willing to take a little bit of a leap and take a risk and try something new. I also hear in your story the importance of a mentor and the importance of, and how important teaching has been for you as well, being with students, with the kind of helping to support younger minds and creativity. I'm reminded of your inauguration. I had the great pleasure of being able to be in the audience on the day of your inaugural ceremony there. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful day. I couldn't have had a better day, both for the event and for the weather as well. It was an event that, these ceremonies can have a little bit of a seriousness and a somberness to them. And, it certainly was a serious day, but it was very joyful. I mean, you had your daughters joined you on the stage, people were in a kind of festive, really happy mood. And I think you set that tone. You set that tone of this is really a happy occasion, kind of so this kind of, and you talked about kindness in your speech as well. You talked about the importance of kindness and leading with kindness. And I wonder if you could talk about that. I think what, I see in your very effective and incredible leadership style, a lot of kindness, a lot of emphasis on the students and the people around you, learning from mentors. And could you talk a little bit more about what is your leadership style? What do you lean into in terms of defining yourself? What do you draw on from your past that helps define the leadership you bring now to Salisbury as president?
Well, first of all, thank you for those extremely kind words, and I'm so glad you were able to be there. We certainly did luck out in terms of the weather, if nothing else. It was a lovely day. I think so often when people ask me about my leadership style, I'm not always able to put it into words necessarily. Some people are very good at saying, these are my values. What I really sort of fall back on is I think my personal values and the way I was raised and the way my parents and my grandparents instilled upon me that if you're not a kind human being, if you're not thoughtful about your words, if you aren't treating people with grace, and my mother would say, just operate under the assumption that everyone around you is doing the best that they can in that moment.
Yeah.
And it may frustrate you because it's not what maybe you have a higher expectation, or you wish they were behaving in a different way. I cannot tell you how often I fall back on, they're doing the best they can in this moment. And then it's very easy to just sort of treat them with grace. Is okay, let's treat them with grace and kindness. And maybe my behavior is the one that needs to shift here, or that I shouldn't be frustrated. I should think about how to work with people. So I think that is a huge driver in how I behave as a president, choose to lead. When I go into meetings, I try and really have people believe, because I genuinely want this. I want to hear what people think. I want to hear varying viewpoints. I want to see those diverse perspectives, because I think that helps us make better choices and better decisions. I think that's key in what we do as educators too, right? If I think about the mentors, you mentioned my mentors. My mentors treated me with kindness. They treated me with respect. They treated me as if my voice mattered, that I was a valued member of their team, their community, their classrooms. I know what that feels like. And the nicest thing anybody could ever say about me is that I made them feel that way. And I think that's, maybe it's my drive to be liked. I don't know. but I think that's a lot of it for me. It's just treat people the way you want to be treated, and, do the best you can to understand that everybody's coming at it from a different perspective.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. That's fantastic. I think that's a great insight into your effective leadership. And so thank you for sharing that. That's wonderful. You mentioned diversity, you mentioned inclusivity. In your State of the University address, you had given a quote that, I think it's something like, if we can't be inclusive, then we can't be excellent, or that you were, let me see, I've got it here. I believe if we are not inclusive, we cannot be excellent. And I think this is really important. I'd love to have you say more about that for us. I know you've put a huge priority on greater diversity, equity, and inclusion at Salisbury, and this is a big part of your leadership as well there. And this quote, for me, kind of encapsulates how you're thinking about it. But I wonder if you could talk more about that. How do you link inclusivity to excellence, and how do you see that playing out under your leadership at Salisbury?
I think it's all tied together. Sometimes there's an assumption that other people's perspectives, life experiences, the way they grew up, whatever it might be, are somehow lesser because they're different. And I think that for me, bringing together diverse groups, and my academic research is on representation, and there's sort of a phrase that gets you. Some colleagues and I wrote a book together, and I feel like in every single chapter it says, if you aren't representative, you're not, represented, you're not at the table. If we aren't seeing people, we're not going to be exposed to different perspectives, and that representation absolutely matters. Partly because if you don't have a seat at the table, or whatever that metaphor expands to, we can't see how big our world is, and how global our world is, and how common our experiences are, and how common sort of those shared universal values are. And so, to me, I see diversity as just, it's mandatory. I mean, think of the first time you got a job, right? And you had to get along with people who, it wasn't just race, it's everything. It's how you grew up, it's your gender, it's the way you perceive religion, it's all those things, right? And you have to find a way to get along with everybody else, and how to take advantage of everybody's life experiences to come to better decisions and agreements. And in education, this should be the melting pot of all of that. Our classrooms should be, and I realize this is idealistic, because a lot of these conversations are hard, right? Because everybody goes into their own scenarios into their classrooms, into their conversations with whatever their life experience is, which may be very different than the person sitting across from you or the many people across from you. And I think it goes back to the kindness and the grace is we can have as diverse group as you want, but if we're not being careful about trying to create a culture in which people with diverse backgrounds feel included, right? That's the inclusivity part, then we haven't done our jobs. I would actually love it if when we talked about DEI, we talked about it as ID, right? Inclusivity and diversity, that inclusivity should lead, that equity and inclusion should lead diversity. Diversity is the group. What we do is the inclusion. And so that's what I would love to be able to further at Salisbury. One is certainly, getting greater numbers of people to see this as a place where they can thrive, but making sure that we've built a system of inclusion and belonging before we invite and have them come through the doors, and that will make us a place that they want to be. And that's to me, that's the whole thing is everyone's voice matters, and to try and create spaces for some of the hard conversations to happen so you can have that inclusive culture. We have some phenomenal people here who are doing great work too. So I just sort of say, let's work on this together and then hire good people who know how to do those things.
Yeah, I think that's terrific. And we have here at Shady Grove, we recently hired our first ever Chief Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Officer, Dr. Jeff Ash. And he always talks about anticipating what someone's going to need, or what their concerns are, their priorities. So that if we're anticipating, we're thinking inclusively. If we're trying to anticipate, someone who might be visually impaired coming to the campus and what they might need, or someone who is hearing impaired, or someone who speaks a different language, and how we can anticipate that and build that in. So that's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing this lovely connection between what you're saying and what I've heard Jeff say as well. I think that's exactly right. And I agree, putting inclusion ahead of time, like, got to be inclusive in order to have this work. This work is really hard, as you say. I mean, there are so many conversations that we're not having because we don't always know how to have them, or because it's really uncomfortable, or it can lead to really, really difficult outcomes as well. And I think our higher education institutions are right on the front line of being able to do something about this. And as you were sharing, it's like, this is the melting pot. This is where it must happen. And what are some of the ways that, from the teams around you and that Salisbury is approaching this? Is it focused on kind of what's happening in the classroom, and kind of opportunities for teachers, for professors to have additional tools and ways to have these conversations? Is it happening among student groups and student organizations? And I'm trying to get a sense of how we go about doing this. If you have any advice for people listening about ways we might start to advance greater inclusivity in the university.
I think it's all of those things, right? I think our faculty, this is the wrong way of saying it, but they have a captive audience, right? They have groups of students who've come to them to gain expertise in whatever the area is. And if we provide faculty with the tools to make sure that we're using inclusive pedagogy, and that can take any number of forms depending on the subjects that you teach and the best practices in field. And we have, a faculty member who also works as an administrator, who works on faculty excellence, who's helping to create programming. This year, before our faculty came back, we held workshops so people could ask some of those questions. Because lots of times faculty want to have those conversations, but they might say, well, gosh, I teach, I don't know, math. How do I have, conversations about inclusivity when I need to teach them calculus? And so it's putting them in spaces where they can say that and say, I would love to be able to do this. Give me some tools to know what to expect.
Yeah.
So I think that's certainly a big part of it, is getting the faculty involved, creating those spaces where they can ask the questions and not feel that they're going to be judged for not knowing what the right thing is to do, because who does, right? We're all coming to it as learners. No matter how big an expert we are, there's always more to learn. And then I think another big way, just to give another example, I think one thing that I'm really, really excited about is we have some amazing student programming, student activities. One that I'm very proud of is we have a program called Powerful Connections, which is run through our Office of Diversity and Inclusion. And we bring in cohorts of students who we invite everybody. Anybody can come as long as they want to come in. They come in about a week early to campus. They get to move into the dorms earlier. Some of them who might be in living learning communities that have different diversity and inclusivity, elements. We have all sorts of living learning communities where we cohort people together based on shared interests. But this group of students comes in and they spend a week working with current students who serve as peer mentors, hearing from alumni from diverse backgrounds about their shared experiences, offering advice for how you navigate college. And it's literally what it's called. It's this idea that the connections that they make are the most important things, right? That it's, yes, you're going to learn a lot of things. Yes, you're going to get skills. Yes, you're going to get a degree, but let's make those connections while we are here to maximize the success. And this year, for the first time, the largest cohort of students we've brought in, if I have my numbers correct, was about 60. This year, we brought in more than 100.
Wow.
And so it's the biggest one ever. It's also the most racially diverse we've ever brought in. We had more students from the LGBTQ plus community come in because they felt that this was a space, that this wasn't about just racial diversity. This was about everybody. It was wonderful. And I was able to spend a fair amount of time with them while they were here for that week. And the joy that I saw on their faces when they took that picture on that last day, I thought, okay, let's do more of this. Let's figure out how we can scale this.
Yeah.
Because this is direct frontline belonging right here. And it's run by two amazing individuals who work in our DEI office. They get all the credit for this. This isn't me. This is all them. And I'm just so proud to be able to brag about it. But
that's
awesome.
awesome.
Lots of those kinds of things. Yeah.
Yeah, those are really great examples to see how you build belonging, how you build inclusivity. That's wonderful. Well, I wonder if we could shift gears a little bit and talk about USG and our partnership with Salisbury. I have to say we have an exercise, we have a degree here around exercise physiology, and and it's this beautiful space that looks like a gym, and a lot of times we'll have students say, hey, is that gym open, for people to like, no, it's a classroom, but it's a fantastic space. But another degree that we have here is in graphic design. And so thinking about your background in magazines and graphic design, and this is a really exciting degree to have here at Shady Grove. I think it's the first in the fine arts that we've had here. And so it's, we're really excited to see it grow, to see it take off. Shady Grove has the possibility to do there's so many more things we can do together, but I wonder if you could talk a little bit about where you see the future of Salisbury with Shady Grove. We've got opportunities to grow programs. We are very, very focused on trying to, in our strategic plan, we're very focused on what we call the more fluid student. So the students, we might say in the past, we might have said non-traditional, but we say fluid because we're very focused on students who have work responsibilities, family responsibilities. Maybe they're financing their own education. Maybe they've encountered some real mental health challenges, especially throughout the pandemic. Maybe English is not their first language, right? They're looking at a more fluid educational and employment experience, perhaps, in the sense that they might need to get a credential and then work, or they might be in school for a while, but then they might need to work or take some time with the family. And so their journey, it may be straight through, but it may also have more ins and outs and fluidity to it as well. And so we're very focused on how can we, through a pathway model, how can we better serve this more fluid student that we see here at Shady Grove. And a lot of times the students who are going to the home campus, they have, they're going to go for 4 years to the home campus and they're going to live on the home campus. But the students coming to Shady Grove, they're here for a reason oftentimes, because that 4-year experience is not possible, but they can still get a great 4-year degree. So we're trying to understand, ways to better serve these students and to do so in a more holistic way with pathways. I'm curious how you see with the trends in higher education and what we're seeing more generally across the higher education landscape, the direction of Salisbury. Do you see ways that we might be able to grow the partnership here, or ways that we can work together in trying to serve this more fluid student? Maybe some things that you're doing on the home campus as well.
I think you have an amazing population there. And I think we are seeing, the trends in higher ed now are absolutely, we have, and sometimes it's students who are they haven't completed their degree, and they would go back and complete their degree if there was a mechanism for them to be able to do it. And so I think being able to offer that kind of programming anywhere, when you think about at both Marist more than anywhere else, right? We had a branch campus for students who wanted to study in Florence, in Florence, Italy. We offered coursework in New York City because we were trying to meet the students where they were.
Yeah.
And not everybody can, I think that there's a wonderfulness about bringing students to a college campus, to let them have that sort of 4-year experience where they have this, incubator-like experience. They get to do the living and the growing up and the clubs and the athletics. That's not for everybody, right? That's not for everybody at all. I still remember my very first visit to Shady Grove. I came for one of the board meetings, and there was a Salisbury student who was sitting at my table at dinner, and she was a social work student, and she was, oh gosh, maybe a semester from graduating. You had invited her to be one of the speakers. And I was chatting with her, and she's like, the first time I'll step foot on Salisbury's campus, she was getting a social work degree, was for graduation. And I thought, now there's a story. And so I asked her, I said, well, why is that? And she's like, I don't even have a sweatshirt. And so we sent her a sweatshirt, but we did. But she's like, I like being here. This is home. I'm comfortable here. My family is here. She had family obligations. She had work that she wanted to be able to continue to do. And if we had said, okay, but the only way you can get a social work degree from us, because she was impressed with our program and our faculty, was to come to the Eastern Shore, which would have been a distance away. There's no easy way for her to have gotten, back and forth. She wouldn't have come. And she wouldn't now have the degree that hopefully is going to open many, many doors for her. So I love that we do this with you. I love that we are thinking about different kinds of degrees or certificates that we can offer. And I suppose if I thought about the future, that would be probably the area I would be looking at the most, is maybe not even necessarily the 4-year degree, but are there the sort of that just-in-time education that a lot of people talk about? It's what people need in the moment. And that's what sometimes drives them back to our campuses is, I would like to get this promotion, but the only way I can get this promotion is if I have this credential.
Exactly.
And that might be a degree. That might be they don't have a bachelor's degree and they need one. It might be they need a certificate from an accredited institution that says, how to do fill in the blank, med tech, whatever it might be. Or it might just be showing that you've done additional coursework that gave you that language to be able to do whatever the job is. And I think sometimes institutions of higher ed aren't as quick to think about those things. And sometimes we have to hear it from employers or students. So I think there are lots of things that we could look at. And I think learning from you, who was right there, speaking to the students, seeing what the region you're in is looking for, looking at what industries have the biggest need in terms of, we're not putting out students fast enough to fill whatever that job is, looking for those opportunities, but to be flexible in how we think about what that education is. It's not just a bachelor's degree. It's more than that. And I think the more we can think about those things, what are those credentials that we can offer that actually might even be better for certain students. My provost and I actually were just having a conversation about how do we better create coursework for I'm this close to graduating, but it was 20 years ago, and how do I just get my degree now? And I think those are some things that we could have conversations about too, is how do we create those pathways to, they really just need that bachelor's degree, because jobs these days will say this is a minimum qualification. How do we get them there so that they have what they need to advance?
Yeah, I love hearing you think about this, because I think it is the kind of forward thinking that we need for the changes in higher education. And in fact, we met your new provost at the provost retreat the other day. Wonderful. So yeah, just terrific new leader there. Terrific on board. I wonder, so a couple of things that you've shared here. Part of our strategic plan is how can we make Shady Grove more of a place where 9 or even 12 university partners collaborate more. You said in your opening comments beautifully that you're not just part of an institution at Salisbury, you're part of a collective of institutions in a university system. And I think Maryland is unique in that sense. It's not a heavy-handed system, but it's a system that has built a community around these institutions. And I think there's an opportunity at Shady Grove in particular, and at the other regional higher education centers, to take advantage of that collaboration and see what we can do more creatively and innovatively together in some of these spaces. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how, what you see as the benefits of being part of a system that is a system, but it is maybe more like a federation as opposed to, as opposed to a heavy-handed republic in that sense. But I'm wondering if you could talk about what are the benefits both to Salisbury and to higher education more generally for being part of this system where leaders can connect with each other and talk with each other, and maybe there's more opportunity there that we're not taking advantage of. Could you reflect on that a little bit?
Sure. Well, yeah, I think as a newer president, right? I just started year 2. The value add for me has been tremendous to know that I had, this tremendously accomplished group of other college presidents who I could call and just say, hey, tell me about this. How are you thinking about this? How are we going about this? Being able to say to students, if you want a different degree, or if you need a master's degree, or whatever it is, you can off one hand say, okay, here are 6 schools that would be excellent for you to look at. And I know this for a fact because I know who's leading those institutions, and I've learned about them, as part of this grouping. I like that we have a system that's helping us create something larger than ourselves. So when we think about the strategic plan of the University System of Maryland and how each of our institutional strategic plans helps support those overarching goals, we're all working towards the same thing, which is the advancement of our state, which is the advancement of our country, which is thinking about how we can educate more students in the best way possible so that they can help their own families and communities and selves. I just think that there's just such strength in that, because there's both consistency and uniqueness. And I think sometimes that gets, you might have somebody say, well, if we're all just the same, if we're all consistent, if we're all doing the same things, then how do we stand out? Yeah. Well, look at each, I'm sure, right? You've talked to many presidents. Every single one of us has the thing that we think is the coolest thing about our own home campus. But that doesn't make the thing that's the coolest about that campus any less cool, because we're all part of this. It's like having sisters and brothers, right? We're all unique. But we share a common set of values. And I think that that's a really powerful thing. I think there's a lot of criticisms right now about higher education. People wonder about the value of higher education. Well, when you can show that you have groups of universities getting along and supporting the same thing and helping to promote each other, I think that speaks volumes, that it isn't just about money. It isn't just about, making ourselves look better. It's all the things, it's all the pieces. And just think about the opportunities for research, for our faculty to collaborate. University of Eastern Shore is right down the road, and day after tomorrow, we're actually getting all our new faculty together for a little reception so that they can meet each other.
That's great.
From the moment they step through the door. Now you got friends that you might have, research with or seek advice about teaching from. They're teaching at a different university, but it doesn't matter, because we're all sort of in this together. And I think that's really powerful. I'm really proud to be a part of that.
Yeah, it's beautiful the way you describe it. And I think you're absolutely right. There's a power in community, in connections and sharing that is, and we hope that some of that can be realized in more direct collaboration at Shady Grove. That's our goal, is that we can bring some of that energy that you're describing so in such a powerful way right there to Shady Grove, for how we're thinking about building pathways and how we're thinking about serving that fluid student, and how we're thinking about addressing equity in a more direct and powerful way, and how we become more student-centered. All of those things, I think, are questions that we can ask together at Shady Grove and elsewhere too, but we think we can do it at Shady Grove as well. I'm going to ask you just a final question to close us out. And I wonder if you could share one thing about Salisbury that you're really proud of, or that really is interesting with our audience. What would you share?
Oh gosh. One thing. Maybe what I would share is this. When I was interviewing for this job, someone said to me, "Oh, Salisbury is a hidden gem." And I remember thinking, what does that mean? What does it mean when you say you're a hidden gem? And because, it made me wonder, okay, well, what is it we're not saying about ourselves? And I think when you look at Salisbury from the outside, we look like maybe a typical, that's maybe not the right word to use, but I think you'll understand what I mean, a typical residential, undergraduate focused comprehensive institution, where we have a lot of good things, and it's a solid place to go and get a degree. We have great athletics, all those things. I think the thing that I would say that has been the greatest surprise and the greatest joy about getting to Salisbury is how excellent we are at some really outstanding things. For instance, the fact that just this last year we were recognized as being a top producer of Fulbright students. Yeah. That's not nothing. That's huge. That means that we are doing such a good job with our students from a faculty and staff perspective, that we are placing students all over the world in these absolutely incredibly prestigious national fellowship programs. I think that speaks volumes about the whole, and this idea that the gem maybe is that we just don't brag about it. We're sort of modest about our successes. And I think people need to look a little bit closer at Salisbury and maybe look at the things that we're not talking about all that much, and see that a student can do anything they want here, anything they want. And we have the infrastructure to support that. And sometimes I don't think we talk about that enough.
That's great. Yeah. Leading in Fulbright scholars. That's amazing.
It's not bad, right?
Fantastic. So, well, Dr. Lepre, Lynn, Thank you so much for your time today. It's been such a pleasure getting to know you more and hearing more about your vision for Salisbury and the way you're approaching the work there. And we look forward to our partnership with Salisbury University very much. We look forward to growing the programs that are here and doing more together to put them into bigger pathways as well. So thank you so much.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you for the invitation, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
All right.